In this video, we're going to explore the simulation environment of Fusion 360 and take a look at the stresses that would be experienced by our bridge. So in order to see that, our bridge is set up on our supports with the rigid joint applied underneath the testing load on the top. I'm going to go through and hit the save button to make sure I got everything saved. I will then go through and choose Design. Click on the Design option to change the workspace over to Simulation. From here, we're going to move into the simulation workspace, and there are a few things that we are going to go through and be taking a look at. So right now I have a previous study that was going to be looked at. So right now I'm going to choose New Simulation Study, so which is this option. I'm going to choose a static stress, and I'm going to create the study. This new study now will allow us to go through and set up for our particular ones here. My study 1, I'm going to go ahead and delete here just so that way we don't have that. Alright, so your screen will look just like mine. One of the first things we need to do is we are going to set up under the load case 1, which is going to be active. Under mesh, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the little pencil icon, and we need to create a mesh. So, and what we're going to do is actually by right clicking on that, I'm going to say generate mesh. And it's going to take a little bit to generate a mesh, preparing our model and generating that. As it prepares, we're going to be able to, within this simulation, see how our bridge is going to react or how it would react within the environment within our testing as the top load applicator is going to pull down on the top of the bridge and apply force to that particular bridge. Alright, once the mesh is generated, you're going to see it creates a mesh pattern, or almost like a series of triangles all around along the faces of my bridge and around the structural supports and the load applicator. I'm going to then set up a few different scenarios. One will be looking at the study materials. So when I click on the icon, one thing that we may need to do is we may need to change the material. So when I click inside of this model, I may need to go through and make the study materials. Right now, majority of these are made from steel, and even though we're using balsa, wood is a limited material. So actually I'm going to go ahead and change this over to make it consistent with a steel as well. And as we go along, this is going to go through and able to be used, and I'm going to say OK. So that is going to change the material of that top applicator, but in order to run the simulation, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to move over to constraints, the structural constraints. I'm going to rotate along the bottom. We're going to create fixed constraints, so that way they are going to, and I'm going to click on the bottom and they will provide locks. So I will also choose the other bottom, as well as going upward. I want to make sure I'm going to choose the edges of my bridge, which are actually going to be, or I can actually probably just choose the entire edge as I go along. Let me see if I can get a good look at the edge here. And maybe because I've already selected faces, I'm going to go ahead and say OK to do those two. Now I'm going to take a look at structural constraints again, fixed. Here we go. Now I can choose the edge, and I'm going to choose the opposite edge of our bridge. And those are meaning that those are going to stay in place. They're not going to move, and those are going to stay stationary. From here, I'm going to click on structural loads. And going underneath my bridge, I want to choose the face, the bottom face of what would be the wood plank that is going to act downward. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip the direction of the arrows, so that way they're going to be pushing down. And the magnitude, I'm going to change the units over to pound force. And let's say, just for the sake of demonstration, we're going to do 100 pounds. Some of the trusses you built, we're able to hold 50 pounds. So let's do 100 just to get some good exaggerated forces. And I'm going to say OK. So you're going to see it's going to turn into one arrow, but when I hover over the arrow, all those arrows are going to be moving downwards. So it just kind of simplifies that. Now that I go through and have that set up, I can check, and so here's the pre-check. The study has all the information required, and I'm going to choose solve. And what will happen is I'm going to say solve one study, and you can set this to the cloud or you can set it locally. I think I'm going to set mine locally and see if it runs any faster. I'm going to click the solve button, and this little dialog will pop up. Okay, the simulation study is going to now start the progress bar and start solving locally. So it means that'll be on your computer. You can choose the on the cloud option, and especially for some of you, if you're using the MacBook Air, you may want to go through and choose the cloud option as far as this goes. So that way it does not put any strain on your machine. But here you're going to see the progress bar will go through and run to solve the study that we have set up. And once it is finished, we're going to be able to see the results of how our bridge is going to experience some stresses. All right, now here will be our results. You're going to see the minimum safety factor is set, so there's some safety factors. I'm going to go ahead and hit close. But here you're able to see the top load as it will be pulled down. This will actually move from this position. These end beams of this particular bridge design are really not going to go through and do a whole lot in order to help support that, but you're going to be able to see the bending that will happen from these particular ones. Keep in mind this is steel, so steel material, but you're going to be able to see kind of how the stresses are going to act on the material. So this is dealing with the safety factor. If I want to choose the stress, which is actually probably a little bit better, so you'll see here, so 0 minimum, and as it increases to the maximum, so areas that are in like this teal, and even you will see some areas of extreme stress in this yellow and orange, almost reddish kind of areas, meaning those are the beams that are going to experience the most amount of stress as they go along and have that force acting downward on them. So this is to go through and to take a look at the stress and things like that. Displacement, again, you can go through and you can change displacement, meaning how far do the beams move. You can see the higher, the more colorful areas, the greens, the yellows, the oranges are the ones that experience the most amount of displacement, whereas toward the ends, the blue is not going to experience any sort of displacement there. So it's all going to be focused right there at the middle as we go along. So this is a really cool kind of scenario. Here's our reaction forces. So this is actually, you can see these are the reactions from our supports and how our bridge is going through and experiencing stresses on the ends like that as well. So you can see there's a lot of different discoloration there even on the ends. So this is a really cool option to go through and to be able to see how do our stresses react and how does the static stress affect our bridge design. So this will kind of give you a little bit of an idea of how your bridge maybe will behave under that loading case.